Logan Carter slammed his palm against the steering wheel, cursing under his breath. The sleek black Aston Martin, his pride and joy, sat motionless on the side of a deserted highway, its engine completely dead. He yanked his phone from his pocket, but of course, there was no signal. "Perfect," he muttered. This was supposed to be a quick road trip, a rare weekend away from the chaos of managing his growing tech empire. Instead, he was stranded in the middle of nowhere, miles away from the nearest town. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the endless road. His only option was to walk and hope for a gas station or a diner. He locked the car and started down the road, his designer loafers crunching against the gravel shoulder. After what felt like an eternity, lights flickered in the distance, a small, rustic diner sitting on the edge of a quiet town. Relief flooded him as he pushed open the door, the scent of coffee and fried food wrapping around him. The place was nearly empty except for an older couple in the corner and a waitress behind the counter, her back turned to him as she scribbled something on her notepad. "Hey, do you guys have a tow truck service around here?" he asked, running a hand through his dark hair. The waitress turned around and Logan's breath caught in his throat. She wasn't just pretty, she was stunning. Sun-kissed skin, piercing green eyes, and long brown hair tied up in a loose ponytail. Her uniform was simple, but something about her made his pulse quicken. "You're out of luck," she said, arching an eyebrow. "Our only tow truck guy is out of town until tomorrow." Logan exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Great, just great." "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, setting down a menu in front of him. "That obvious," he smirked. She gave him a once-over, eyes lingering on his expensive watch and tailored shirt. "Yeah, you scream Lost City guy," he chuckled, shaking his head. "Logan Carter, and you are Olivia Reed." She crossed her arms. "So, Logan Carter, what exactly are you doing in the middle of nowhere?" "Road trip," he admitted. "Supposed to be clearing my head, but now I'm stuck." Olivia tilted her head, studying him. "Well, looks like you've got two options. You can sleep in your fancy car, or," she hesitated for a moment before continuing, "I have a spare room at my place. It's not a 5-star hotel, but it's better than sleeping outside." Logan blinked. He wasn't used to strangers offering help, especially without expecting something in return. But something about Olivia's steady gaze told him she wasn't someone who played games. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yeah," she shrugged. "Small-town hospitality." Logan hesitated for only a second before nodding. "All right, lead the way." As they stepped outside, the night air was crisp and the town was eerily quiet. Olivia's truck was old but sturdy, and when she started the engine, it roared to life. "You don't trust people easily, do you?" she asked as she pulled onto the road. Logan glanced at her. "What makes you say that?" "You hesitated back there," she smirked. "Like you thought I might rob you or something," he chuckled. "Let's just say trust isn't something I give freely." "Well, lucky for you, I'm not interested in whatever's in your wallet," she teased. For the first time in a long time, Logan felt something he wasn't used to: curiosity. Olivia wasn't like the women he met at corporate events or luxury galas. She was real. And for some reason, he found himself wanting to know more. The drive to Olivia's house was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Logan stole glances at her as she focused on the road, her hands steady on the wheel. She was different from the women he usually encountered: polished socialites who clung to him for his wealth or connections. Olivia seemed completely unaffected by him, as if he were just another passerby in her small-town life. Her house was a modest, charming little place on the outskirts of town, surrounded by towering oak trees. The porch light flickered as she parked her truck, and Logan stepped out, stretching his stiff muscles. "You're lucky I don't mind taking in stranded strangers," Olivia said, unlocking the front door. But if you turn out to be an axe murderer, I'm warning you I keep a shotgun in my closet." He smirked. Julie noted. "And for the record, I'm not a murderer." "Good to know," she replied dryly, pushing the door open. Inside, the house was warm and inviting, though clearly lived in. A worn-out couch sat in the living room, and a pile of books was stacked haphazardly on the coffee table. The faint scent of vanilla lingered in the air. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe. Olivia gestured toward a small guest room. "You can crash here. Bathrooms down the hall. If you need anything, just knock." Logan set his overnight bag retrieved from his car before leaving it behind on the bed. "I appreciate this," he said sincerely. She shrugged. "No big deal." "Just don't expect breakfast in bed," he chuckled. "Noted." She disappeared down the hall, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Logan sat on the bed, running a hand through his hair. He wasn't used to relying on strangers. His life was meticulously controlled, every detail planned. Yet here he was, stranded in a small town, staying in the home of a woman he'd just met. And for some reason, he didn't hate it. The next morning, Logan woke to the sound of sizzling bacon and the faint hum of music. He stretched, rubbing the sleep from his eyes before stepping out of the guest room. Olivia stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, her hair slightly tousled. She glanced at him over her shoulder. "Morning, figured you'd need something to eat before you head out." His lips twitched. "I thought you said no breakfast in bed." "This isn't in bed, is it?" she shot back, smirking. Logan sat at the small wooden table, watching as she moved around the kitchen with practiced ease. It was oddly domestic, something he hadn't experienced in years. His world was filled with business meetings, take-out dinners in his penthouse, and the constant pressure of running an empire. But here, in Olivia's kitchen, things felt simple. "So, what exactly do you do, Logan?" she asked, sliding a plate of pancakes in front of him. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. He wasn't ashamed of his success, but he'd learned that revealing his wealth too soon often changed the way people treated him. "I own a tech company," he said, keeping it vague. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That explains the expensive car and the 'I'm too important to be stranded' attitude," he chuckled, guilty as charged. She took a sip of her coffee, studying him. "So why were you really on a road trip? Guys like you don't just take off without a reason." Logan exhaled, swirling his coffee. "Needed a break. My company's expanding, and it's been exhausting." Something flickered in Olivia's eyes, a hint of understanding. "Yeah, I get that." "You do," she nodded. "I used to dream big too, wanted to open my own restaurant. But my dad got sick and I had to take over the diner. Plans changed." Logan frowned. "That must have been tough," she shrugged. "Life happens." For a moment they sat in silence, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Logan wasn't used to opening up to strangers, but Olivia had a way of making things feel natural, effortless. Before he could say more, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his assistant, probably calling about some crisis back at the office. Olivia noticed. "Duty calls?" He hesitated before silencing the call. "It can wait." She looked surprised but said nothing. Instead, she grabbed her keys. "Come on. Let's check on your car." They drove back to where his Aston Martin sat, still lifeless on the side of the road. Olivia popped the hood, inspecting the engine with a critical eye. "You know cars?" Logan asked, impressed. She smirked. "Grew up fixing my dad's old truck. This is nothing." After a few minutes, she wiped her hands on a rag. "Looks like your fuel pump's shot." "You'll need a mechanic," Logan exhaled. "Great, how long will that take?" "A day or two, depending on when they can get the part." He ran a hand through his hair. "Looks like I'm stuck here a little longer." Olivia grinned. "Guess so." He should have been annoyed. His schedule was tight and being stranded in a small town wasn't exactly ideal. But as he looked at Olivia, her green eyes glinting with amusement, he realized something shocking. He didn't mind at all. Logan found himself settling into the rhythm of small-town life far more easily than he expected. With his car out of commission for at least another day, he had no choice but to slow down, something he hadn't done in years. Olivia, for her part, seemed to find his predicament endlessly amusing. "So, city boy," she teased, handing him a cup of coffee as they sat on her porch that evening, the sun melting into the horizon. "What are you going to do with yourself now that you can't bury your head in work?" he smirked, taking a sip. "Are you implying I don't know how to relax?" "I'm saying you look like the kind of guy who measures time in stock prices and board meetings," she countered, nudging his knee with her foot. "I bet the idea of doing nothing freaks you out." She wasn't entirely wrong. Logan's life had been a relentless climb to the top, every hour accounted for, every move calculated. But here, in this quiet town with Olivia, he felt something foreign: ease. "So, what do people do for fun around here?" he asked, setting his cup down. Olivia's eyes sparkled with mischief. "You're about to find out." She dragged him to the town's summer festival, a local tradition filled with string lights, live music, and the scent of fried dough hanging in the air. Logan had expected it to be dull, but the moment they stepped onto the main street, Olivia's energy was infectious. "You've never been to a festival like this, have you?" she asked, watching as he eyed the booths with cautious curiosity. "Not exactly my scene," he admitted. "Then we're changing that," she declared, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward a game booth. The warmth of her fingers sent an unexpected jolt through him, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he let her lead him through the chaos, the sound of laughter and music filling the air. She stopped at her ring toss booth, handing him a set of rings. "Think you can handle this, mister?" "Big shot," Logan smirked. "You're underestimating me." He tossed the first ring and missed. Olivia burst into laughter. Okay, that was just a warm-up," he muttered, rolling his shoulders like an athlete preparing for battle. By the time he finally landed a ring, Olivia was doubled over with laughter, wiping tears from her eyes. The sight of her, carefree and radiant under the festival lights, did something to him. "All right, you win," he conceded. "Damn right I do," she grinned, holding up the stuffed bear she'd won. "Maybe I should be the one running a billion-dollar company." He chuckled, but there was something deeper beneath her words. Logan had met plenty of ambitious people, but Olivia had something different: a quiet strength, a resilience that made him admire her more than he expected. As the night wore on, they found themselves on the Ferris wheel, the town stretching out in twinkling lights below them. Olivia leaned back, sighing in contentment. "You ever think about just stepping away from it all?" she asked. Logan hesitated. "From work? From everything, just disappearing for a while, no pressure, no expectations." He considered her words. He had spent years building his empire, clawing his way up from nothing. But now, for the first time, he wondered what it would be like to let go. "Maybe," he admitted. Olivia turned to him, eyes searching his face. "You don't have to live like the world will collapse if you take a breath, you know." He swallowed, the weight of her words settling in his chest. Before he could respond, the ride jerked to a stop at the very top. The town was spread out beneath them, but Logan barely noticed. His attention was entirely on Olivia. And then, before he could think better of it, he reached for her. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if testing the waters. But the moment Olivia responded, tilting her head and pressing closer, something ignited. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something that had been building between them since the moment they met. When they finally pulled away, Olivia exhaled a shaky breath. "Well," she murmured, a teasing glint in her eyes, "didn't see that coming." Logan chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Neither did I." But he wasn't sorry, not one bit. They walked back to her truck in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged, the air between them thick with something unspoken. Logan had kissed plenty of women before, but none of them had ever made him feel like this, like he was standing on the edge of something life-altering. As they reached her house, Olivia hesitated. "Logan," she started, but he shook his head. "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. I don't regret it." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Me neither." And just like that, something shifted between them, irrevocably. The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances, lingering touches, and conversations that stretched late into the night. Logan found himself drawn deeper into Olivia's world, a world so different from his own that it should have felt foreign. But instead, it felt right. The town was small, but its people were warm. Everywhere they went, Olivia was greeted with smiles and waves, and Logan, despite his initial reluctance, found himself welcomed as if he belonged. He helped her at the diner, much to the amusement of the regulars, who clearly enjoyed watching a billionaire fumble with a coffee pot. "You're getting better," Olivia teased one afternoon as he nearly spilled a plate of fries. "Don't lie to me," Logan shot back, smirking. "I'm a lost cause," she grinned, wiping her hands on her apron. "Maybe a little." But beneath the teasing, something real was growing between them. Logan had never been one to believe in fate, but meeting Olivia getting stranded in this town felt like something bigger than coincidence. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, reality came crashing in. Logan's car was finally fixed. He stood outside the mechanic's shop, staring at the sleek black vehicle that had once symbolized his freedom. Now it felt like an anchor, dragging him back to a life that suddenly seemed far less appealing. Olivia stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Guess this is it," she said, trying to sound casual. "You could come with me," Logan said before he could stop himself. She blinked, caught off guard. "What? Come with me to the city," he said, turning to face her fully. "I don't want this to end." Olivia searched his face, something conflicted flickering in her green eyes. "Logan." "My life is here." "You could have a different life," he argued gently. "You talked about wanting more, about wanting to open your own restaurant." "You could do that in the city," she exhaled, rubbing her temples. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because I don't just get to pick up and leave," she said, frustration creeping into her tone. "I have responsibilities, a life. I can't just drop everything for something that might not even work." Logan flinched at her words, but he nodded slowly. "I get it," she sighed, stepping closer. "It's not that I don't care," she admitted, her voice softer now, "but we come from two different worlds. You belong in yours and I belong in mine." Something in his chest tightened. "I don't think that's true," she swallowed, looking away. "It has to be." Logan had built his entire life on control, on knowing exactly where he was going and how to get there. But for the first time he felt utterly powerless, so he did the only thing he could. He kissed her. It was desperate, almost frantic, as if trying to imprint this moment into memory. Olivia responded instantly, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. It was everything heartache and longing and something dangerously close to love. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes were glassy. "Goodbye, Logan," she whispered, and then she turned and walked away. Logan watched her go, every fiber of his being screaming at him to chase after her. But he didn't, because as much as he wanted to fight for her, he knew Olivia had to choose him willingly. So he got in his car and drove away. The city felt emptier than it ever had. Logan threw himself back into work, drowning in meetings and deals, but nothing felt the same. His penthouse, once a symbol of his success, felt cold. The restaurants, the people, the luxury, it all felt hollow, because Olivia wasn't there. Days turned into weeks, and still, he couldn't shake her from his mind. He checked his phone more times than he cared to admit, hoping for a message that never came. And then, one night, as he sat in his office staring blankly at his laptop, realization hit him like a freight train. He had spent his entire life building an empire, chasing success. But none of it mattered if he didn't have someone to share it with. So he made a decision. A reckless, impulsive, utterly insane decision. He got in his car and drove back to the small town that had changed everything. By the time he pulled up in front of Olivia's house, his heart was pounding. She opened the door, eyes widening in shock. "Logan, I love you," the words tumbled out before he could second-guess himself. "I love you, Olivia. And I don't care where we live or what it takes. I just know I can't go back to my life without you in it." She stared at him, stunned. "Logan." "I know it's crazy," he admitted, stepping closer. "But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I'll stay here if that's what it takes, or we can go somewhere new. It doesn't matter as long as I'm with you." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a terrifying moment, he thought she was going to turn him away. But then she launched herself into his arms, kissing him with a force that stole his breath. "You idiot," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," Logan laughed, holding her tighter. "Then come with me," she nodded, smiling through her tears. "Anywhere." And just like that, everything fell into place. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Logan had always been a man who moved fast, who saw something he wanted and took it without hesitation. But this was different. Loving Olivia wasn't about possession or control. It was about building something real, something lasting. They split their time between the city and the small town she called home. Logan had thought she might be overwhelmed by his world, by the towering skyscrapers and high-stakes business deals. But Olivia adapted with ease, walking into his life like she had belonged there all along. And Logan, he found himself falling harder every day. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly before them, Logan watched Olivia with quiet admiration. She leaned against the railing, the wind playing with her hair, completely at ease. "You're staring," she murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. "I can't help it," he admitted. "You're breathtaking." She turned to him, tilting her head. "You know, I never imagined my life turning out like this." "Like what?" he asked, stepping closer. "With you," she said softly. "I spent so much time thinking I had to do everything on my own. That happiness was something I had to earn before I could allow myself to feel it." Logan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And now," she exhaled, her green eyes locking onto his. "Now I know I don't have to do it alone." His chest tightened at her words, an overwhelming sense of rightness settling over him. He had spent his life chasing success, but Olivia had shown him that happiness wasn't measured in numbers or achievements. It was in moments like this, simple, quiet, and undeniably real. "Come with me," he said suddenly. She frowned. "I'm already here." "No," he shook his head, taking her hands in his. "I mean for good." "Move in with me." Olivia's breath hitched, surprise flickering across her face. "Logan, I know it's fast," he said quickly, "and I don't want to pressure you. But I love you and I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want—" She silenced him with a kiss, her hands framing his face. When she pulled away, she was smiling. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll move in with you." Relief flooded him, followed by something deeper, something more profound. Something that told him this was only the beginning. As they settled into their new life together, Logan found himself making changes he never would have considered before. He delegated more at work, cutting down his hours so he could spend more time with Olivia. He started investing in things that mattered to her, quietly funding small businesses in her hometown, though he never told her. He didn't need credit. He just needed her. One evening, as they sat curled up on the couch, Olivia glanced at him thoughtfully. "You're different, you know." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" She traced a finger along his jawline. "You're happier." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "That's because of you." She shook her head. No. It's because you let yourself be. Her words settled deep in his chest, resonating in a way he hadn't expected. She was right, and he wasn't going to waste another second. The next day, Logan disappeared for a few hours, leaving Olivia to wonder what he was up to. When he returned, there was a spark in his eyes, a barely contained excitement that made her suspicious. "What did you do?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. He smirked. "Come with me and find out." He led her through the city, weaving through streets until they arrived at a stunning, modern space with large windows and an open kitchen. Olivia frowned. "What is this?" Logan turned to her, his expression soft. "It's yours," she blinked. "What?" "I bought it for you," he said simply, "for your restaurant." "Your dream." Her lips parted in shock, her eyes darting around the space as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Logan, I know you were scared to take the leap," he said gently. "So I took it for you." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment she was speechless. Then, without warning, she threw herself into his arms, burying her face in his chest. "I love you," she whispered fiercely. Logan held her tighter. "I love you more." As she pulled back, a new determination settled in her expression. "Then let's do this." And just like that, everything they had ever wanted was finally within reach.